Welcome back for part two. So for part two, we are now going to be trying to actively use the passive and try to look at some examples. We want to see how the passive is used in other reports outside of the police ones, and then we want to see if we can imitate any of these phrases or keywords in your own reports when reporting information. And for this, we're going to be reading some things from the news. Specifically, we're going to be going over a report from Al Jazeera about cocaine in New Zealand. What? Maybe not just for New Zealand. We're also going to be going over a search warrant. A what now? This is a Durchsuchungsbeschluss. An affidavit. Affidavit in German is affidavit. Yeah, I know. I'll let you guys figure that one out and explain it to me when we come back in November. We'll also be going through a few more examples and looking at some passive sentences and seeing if we can apply these and the rules about them and the whys about them to this text. So without further ado, let's get to reading. Let's get to understanding. So as always, comprehension, noticing, and then use. Those are always the three basic steps of teaching. So that's what we will be adhering to. So let's read through this text first, try to understand it, and then identify the present perfect and passive sentences appropriately. New Zealand recovers 3 tons of cocaine floating in the sea. Police say the drugs were enough to supply New Zealand for 30 years, were found in the Pacific, and probably destined for Australia. New Zealand authorities have recovered 3.2 tons of cocaine worth more than 300 million found floating in the Pacific Ocean and believed to be bound for Australia. Police said the haul of 81 bundles, which was drifting hundreds of kilometres northwest of New Zealand, was recovered in a joint operation with the New Zealand Customs Service and Defence Force acting on intelligence from Five Eyes Alliance. Which also includes Australia, the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Basically, all of the English-speaking countries all like to hang out and share secrets together. This is the largest find of illicit drugs by New Zealand's agencies by some margin, said Commissioner of the New Zealand Police, Andrew Costa. Officials believe the drugs were dropped at a floating transit point in the Pacific Ocean where they would have been picked up and taken to Australia. A police photo showed the massive haul was bound by netting and covered in floats. Some of the bales had a Batman symbol on them, with packages of cocaine inside labelled with what appeared to be a print of a 4-leafed clover. Picture thereof. Costa described the bust as a huge result for police in both New Zealand and Australia. There is no doubt this discovery lands a major financial blow right from the South American producers through to the distributors of this product, he added. Officials said it was too early to say where the drugs came from. No arrests have been made. Okay, so let's go back. Let's try to understand this. First of all, 3 tons of cocaine. How much would that be for Berlin? A week, a day, a month? I've been told Berlin goes through heroin more, but I could be completely wrong there. So the drugs, where were they found? Where were they found? Were they found off the coast of Australia, off the coast of New Zealand, off the coast of Tahiti, or just somewhere in the Pacific Ocean? Okay. How much cocaine was found? How much? And where was it going to go? So it was found by people in New Zealand, but where was it going to go? Hopefully you have yours open. Please, if you need to, pause the video, find the article, and I'll be on the link with the associated materials. and then go through and take your time to find all of the things. And who dropped off the materials at a transit point? Who dropped these drugs off? First of all, what was it bound with? So when these drugs were bound, it was bound by something. And what exactly was the symbol labeled on them? Was it a Batman symbol, a four-leaf clover symbol, a SpongeBob symbol, or was it the symbol of a country from South America? And has anyone been arrested for this crime? Has anyone been arrested yet? Okay, so going back, it was recovered in the ocean. It wasn't specifically mentioned where it was recovered from. Then it was 3.2 tons of cocaine worth 300 million. That's a lot of drugs. And also, it was going to Australia, or many people believe it was going to Australia, and it was found with a Batman symbol on the outside, and the cocaine inside was labeled with a four-leaf clover symbol. And has anyone been arrested? No, not yet. Not yet. So let's go back, and now we want to try to use the passive a little bit more by identifying it. So let's go through and try to notice the passive. Which sentences are passive, and then we're going to go over the why. So the drugs were found. So here we have a classic example of a passive. We have were, the Hilfsverb, and found in the present perfect form. However, we also have here destined. Is that passive? Yes, it is. Because this can be used to affect that and that. So the drugs were destined for Australia. This is also a passive sentence. Okay, so let's go through. I'll give you guys a minute. Okay, so first of all, present perfect identified. How do we know that this is present perfect? It has just recently happened. So this was written literally the next day. New Zealand authorities have recovered drugs recently. So this is passive perfect for that reason. Present perfect for that reason. And the drugs were found floating. But do we see a were? Anyone see a were? No, this is not passive. Okay. And believed to be bound for Australia. I'd say this is possibly poorly written, and it is believed. If there was an is believed, would be a passive, but there isn't. To be bound for Australia. This, however, is passive. The drugs are believed to be bound. The whole thing, entirety, would be considered passive. This is to be in the infinitive, and bound it's in the present perfect form. Okay. Police said the haul of 81 bales, which was drifting. Is this passive? Nope. No, it is not. This is simple past continuous, which is another form that we're not going to talk about. Was recovered. 100% passive. 100% passive. Why is this passive? Well, if we go back to here, go away. Passive in English, use, form. It's mainly used here when we want to either not talk about, where's the rules? Okay, never mind. It's not going to give me the rules. I'll give you the rules. It is being used here because was recovered in a joint operation with these people. It is more important to say that the drugs were recovered. The haul, in this case it's haul, so haul is singular. The haul was recovered by these people. This part is longer, it's harder to say and put it in the front, so in this case, we want to focus on what was done first versus the people who did it. Okay. The one for this one, why this is done, it is believed by some people. Do we need to say who has this opinion? No, we do not. So these people are not mentioned, therefore passive. And we want to focus on what was done more than who did it. This is the largest drug find, blah, 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 who cares? Officials believe the drugs were dropped at a floating transit point. Is this passive? Yes, it is. Remember my question earlier, who dropped it off? We don't know. In the same way that the police would say the car was stolen, the bike was found, the man was arrested, we don't know who did these things, or we don't care. Or it's very obvious. Like, who did the arresting? I wonder who arrested the man who was stealing the stuff. It was probably the police. The drugs were dropped off probably by the criminals. Do we need to say who did it? No, we do not. That's why this is passive. Same for this one here. Would have been picked up. Present perfect passive. Oh, beautiful. Would have... Actually, no, it's conditional. Conditional. Would have been picked up. Who's picking them up? Drug dealers. Do we know who did it? No. Do we know who was going to do it? No. Do we care? Also no. Okay, we have 3 more passive sentences or 3 more passive parts in this. Can you see them? Correct. Was destined. Would have been. And, oh, the last one? Oh, never mind. It's all the way down there. Never mind, I thought there was another. We believe it was destined, and it would have been enough to service the market. This is a conditional, would have been enough, and this is just the normal standard passive. Would have been enough to service. Ay. That's a lot of drugs. Only for 1 year though in Australia. Interesting. The massive haul was bound. That is passive. Why is it passive? Well, someone did the binding. Someone did the binding of the nets. Do we care who did it? No. Do we know who did it? Also no. So we don't need to mention it. Some of the bales had this, and the cocaine would have been labelled, was labelled. Again, we don't need to say who did it. That is passive. Oh, here we go. Here's the one that I really wanted to focus on. No arrests have been made. Is this a passive sentence? Yes, it is. This particular sentence is 100% passive, and it is used in this case to say that it has not yet happened. Again, present perfect, time frames. In this case, it's talking about the investigation. The investigation would be the time word or time reference that would be used. And this is essentially saying the arrest hasn't been made yet because the investigation is not finished. So the investigation started in the past and has not yet been finished. Present perfect. And who's doing the investigation? We're not going to say who. Do we need to say that Officer John Smith or Officer Costa is doing the investigation? No, we do not. And if he is doing the investigation, he probably doesn't want it to be known. No arrests have been made by Officer Costa yet. But pay attention. Maybe this will happen soon. I don't know. I do not know Mr. Costa. I have no idea what's going on here. So, passive, 100% or 100%. Okay, so we now understand this text. We can now identify passive sentences, and hopefully we are now able to use them. So let's do exactly that. But first, we're going to have a small break. Okay, welcome back. Hope you grabbed yourself a snack or something nice and warm, because I do believe it will be cold in Berlin at this moment. Let's get ready to rumble with the main part of this activity. So now we can identify present perfect, explain why it's passive present perfect, identify the passive, give reasons why it's there. Now we're going to try to analyze this inside of a report, again say why it's passive, and then create sentences that are either active from passive or passive from active sentences. And we want to do this in regards to this report, because in the next lesson you will be making actual reports. So grab yourself your snacks if you haven't, and let's begin. Beginning with the search warrant from Rick Gore. This is a online report that I found. It's a really, really interesting one. It shows you the mindset of your American colleagues, what they have to do, from the county of Yolo. And I looked this up. County of Yolo. County. It's a real place. It's a real place in Sacramento. You wouldn't think it, but it's real. And this particular thing is an affidavit. Affidavit from memory is in Beeidstättete Erklärung, something along those lines. You don't need to know this word in English unless you work with the Staatsanwalt. Lawyers need to know this, police officers to a certain extent. But what you do need to know is that this is a search warrant, a Durchsuchungsbeschluss. And in this case, we're going to be going over very particular phrases that will help you to either explain warrants or express interest. Okay, we're not going to read all of this. We're only going to read the bottom page. All you need to know is there's all sorts of different clauses and things you need to do in America. I think the one that is the most infamous is the no-knock clause. That is where you go into someone's house and you don't knock on the door and say, "Hello, police, we're coming in." In Germany, my understanding is only in exceptional circumstances is that allowed. If I'm wrong, let me know. Again, please let me know. I'm very, very interested to hear your opinions on these matters. Okay. So if you really want to, you can read the whole thing. This is from his experience and what we call a statement of probable cause. And what's interesting with this probable cause is we are going to decide and determine whether this is Anfangsverdacht, hinreichend, oder dringender Tatverdacht. Again, I am not a lawyer. I'm not a police officer. You guys are. And you guys will tell me for your homework whether we believe that this man is going to get his warrant approved or not, and if he has enough evidence for probable cause. We're not going to go over his experience. I'm sure he's very, very experienced. What we are going to go over is facts in support of the warrant. So let's read this through, go through, understand it, and then we're going to identify present perfect sentences, simple past sentences, passive sentences, and then go over the whys, and then trying to justify some things. So without further ado, let's begin. This is a stolen gun investigation where the suspect was recently arrested for possessing a loaded stolen gun and about 4 grams of methamphetamines. Yay, drugs and guns, name a better combination. S. Flores, or suspect Flores, was discovered wearing a bulletproof vest while engaged in this criminal activity. The gun S. Flores possesses was one of 8 stolen guns out of Sacramento. On the 28th of the 7th, 2004, again, Americans, they put the day before the month. They put the month before the day. Detective Villa of the West Sacramento Police Department contacted me. He informed me that suspect Rob Flores was arrested last night for possessing a stolen gun and was wearing a bulletproof vest while also possessing methamphetamines. S. Flores is a known member of Broderick Boys and has a prior arrest for violence and violent crimes. S. Flores bailed out of jail almost immediately. There was a bail enhancement to increase his bail to $75,000, but the suspect was released before the enhancement could be obtained. I have spoken to Detective Villa, who is the gang officer for West Sacramento Police Department. He is a recognized expert in gang activity and behavior. It is his belief that this known gang member was involved in gang activity when committing the aforementioned crimes, and that drug and guns are the most prevalent crimes in the gang community. It is also his belief that S. Flores may have additional firearms and ammunition at his house that may be used in further gun and gang violence if they are not secured. I think this is absichert in German. So secure can mean a whole bunch of different words. Detective Villa has also spoken to a CI. A CI is a criminal informant on the street. This CI told Detective Villa that S. Flores had guns and was selling drugs. This information was provided to Detective Villa before S. Flores was arrested. Since the suspect held on to or obtained the stolen gun he possessed, it is likely that he either has additional guns or stolen property at his house, or has evidence that may lead to the location of other stolen guns that are still outstanding in the community. As the gun violence investigator, it is my belief that S. Flores was possibly on his way to carry out a gang attack, a gang retaliation shooting, or delivering drugs for his gang benefit and advancement. The fact that S. Flores was wearing a bulletproof vest indicates that he was planning and preparing for a violent encounter with the police, rival gang members, or innocent civilians. Based on the foregoing, my training, experience, and expertise, it is my opinion, and I believe that guns and drugs may still be at the suspect's address. It is also my opinion that evidence and instrumentalities of the crime, of possession of stolen property and guns, and possession of drugs, may be located at the above location. I request that a search warrant be issued. Okay. So again, pull up this material from your class material file, and let's go through this and comprehend it. So, quick comprehension questions. Who is S. Flores, and what was he recently discovered wearing and carrying? Then we also want to know who this detective is speaking to. He is speaking to someone who is giving him extra information. For example, where did Detective Villa get his information from about the guns and the drugs? Is this a reliable source? Is this a reliable source of information? Who let S. Flores out of prison? Because he was arrested and then he got out. And also, how much was his bail supposed to be? Bail is the money you pay to get out of prison. And last but not least, since the suspect was held onto the stolen guns, where do the police think that these particular items might be? The guns, the drugs, the bulletproof vest. Okay. And last but not leastly, what's the most useful evidence? Do we have probable cause to arrest this man or to search his house? Do you think under these circumstances the German police would be allowed to investigate further and or arrest him or search his house and, of course, take the drugs and guns away? And if so, which is the most useful piece of information? Is it the fact that he's wearing a bulletproof vest? Is that even, it's mentioned in the text that he's wearing a bulletproof vest, and this suggests that he was possibly on his way to do so. Does that work in Germany? Is that possible? Does that add to the evidence, or does him simply possessing a gun count? So, do we have enough to arrest him? Do we have enough to search his house? What pieces of evidence would help the most? Okay, I'll give you guys 2-3 minutes to go through that. Pause the video, come back if you need to. And let's go to the next part, which is the identifying the passive sentences. So there's about 20 pieces of passive materials here. I'll just highlight a couple. You don't need to see all of them. Was recently arrested. That's kind of obvious. Why is this passive? Simple. He was arrested by the police. Do we need to mention the police officer doing the arresting? No, we do not. He was discovered. Same reason. A police officer discovered this. We do not need to mention this. Was one of the guns stolen from Sacramento? Was one of the guns stolen? This is passive. And again, we're not saying who stole it because we don't know. Or the police officer here does not know. It is known. He is a known gang member. Is this passive? Unironically, no. He is a known gang member. This is simply a statement. In this case, known is working as an adjective. This is not a passive sentence at all. The suspect was released before the enhancement could be obtained. This is also 100% passive. So, who released him? Obviously, a police officer. And this happened before or in this case, the officer in question, I'm not a police officer, obviously. This particular man could obtain the bail enhancement. Okay. So this is a double passive. This is a normal passive, and this is a conditional passive. This also leads me to my favorite passive phrase in English. Mistakes were made. Who made the mistake? Dunno. In this particular case, this is probably written in the passive because we don't want to say who did it. We don't want to mention which police officer did it. I have spoken to this person. This is present perfect. Why is it present perfect? Because it happened recently. This just in. I just today or this week or at the time of this report, I just recently spoke to him. He is recognized. This is not passive. He is a recognized gang expert. Yep. It is his belief. Also not passive. Was involved. That is passive. There's a couple of others that may be used. Or might be used. This is conditional passive. This is simply saying, I believe this instead. It may be used by the person. We're not going to mention who did it because we've said it 1,000 times, or it is not relevant. If they're not secured, again, if they're not secured, this is passive because we're not going to say who does it. Detective Villa has spoken to a CI. This is present perfect, and it is present perfect because it again happened very recently. But the CI told him this indicates it probably happened yesterday. This particular case it's simple past, and was selling drugs also simple past. Simple past continuous in this case. Information was provided. Passive. Was arrested. Passive. Who did it? Probably the CI. We don't care. Who arrested S. Flares? Probably Detective Villa. We don't care. We don't need to say so. There's a whole bunch of others here, but this is the last one that I really want to focus on. I request that a search warrant be issued. Who issues a search warrant? This is the last reason why you would use the passive. We're not going to go into it, but is a reason that you probably need to know, and you probably need to know this phrase at the very least. I request that a search warrant be issued. In this case, it is being used to be polite because this warrant in America is given to a judge. So a police officer goes in, gets a warrant, writes up the warrant, and then gets it yayed or nayed by a judge. So I request that a search warrant be issued. If I say to you, I want you to issue me a warrant, it's very direct, it's too rude. I request that a search warrant be issued by a judge. In this case, it's suggesting that there might be multiple judges, and I don't know who's going to do it. But that doesn't matter. Let's be real. The judge receiving this warrant probably is the one that is going to sign off, so that is why it is in passive as well. I request that a warrant be issued. I request, because we have the word request, we have to use the infinitive form of to be afterwards. Issued is still in the present perfect form. And again, if we see the Hilfsverb be, it's going to be in passive. If these two things come together and are combined. Okay, so hopefully by now you have heard enough of the passive being said, because what I want you guys to now do, and this is the main activity now that you've identified. From my time, it should have taken you at least 5 minutes to do the previous activities and to identify these things. So you guys will probably need another 10 minutes to do this. Next part, 8 to 10 minutes, that's up to you. What I want you guys to now do is go through, so pause the video, go through this particular the text here, and where things are being said, it was discovered, it was found, it is known, blah, 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 change it. I want you to show to me now that you can change sentences that are passive and make them active. Go through and find the thing and say, this is about me now. So, as an example, the suspect, so again, as always, don't translate the whole sentence, just the part that counts. The suspect was recently arrested. No. I arrested the suspect. Be specific. So we're changing it from passive to active, and I want you to go through and say, I did this. I'm the hero cop. I did this. And for this sentence, there was a bail enhancement, but the suspect was released before the enhancement could be obtained. Someone released him, pick a friend, someone who can take the joke and say, so-and-so released this person. They made the mistake. Mistakes were made? No. He or she made the mistake. I know who did it, and I'm going to say who did it. And for this one, before I could obtain it, or before I could obtain the warrant. Change it around, make it be about you. Make yourself be the main focus. So this should take you about 8 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes, going through this text, figuring out which are the key phrases and changing it from passive to active. So I'll see you guys in 8 minutes. Okay, welcome back. So right now it should be about 41 minutes into the lesson time that you have done. And let's do the last part. So now that you guys have worked with these sentences from present perfect, so from passive to active, let's make some sentences. Again, it doesn't need to take too long. From the present perfect or the simple past into the passive. So for example, I have spoken to Detective Villa. What would you do here? take Detective Villa, put him at the front. I have spoken to. So spoken's in the perfect form. We keep it as is. And then you would need to choose the correct auxiliary. In this case, it's no longer have, rather has. And you would say, Detective Villa has been spoken to by a police officer, whatever. Just go through this text now and create for me 4 to 5 passive sentences from the active mentions. For example, he informed me that this person was found. He informed me. Change that. Make that into the passive. Use the correct form of the auxiliary. So am, is, was, were, have been, has been, depending on the time that you see here, and so on. This should only take you about 3 to 5 minutes tops. Give me 4 to 5 examples from active sentences here, and then make these details be passive. Okay, and that ends part 2. So now that we've understood how to use them, identified and seen them, we are now starting to create these sentences. These passive sentences and present perfect sentences. Now that we are capable of doing this, we will be writing a report, and we will be seeing for that in part 3, where you guys will very clearly identify various things and various activities from a video. Video will be there in the homework materials. I don't think I'm allowed to show you the whole video. Again, copyright. So I will be expecting you guys to but to write down various passive things and to make reports and send those to me from that. Anyway, I'll see you guys for that in part 3.